Hopefully this goes. Oh, I think we're gonna be rolling in a second here. It looks like it's good. Slowly but surely getting this thing up and running. Almost there. Tuesday night, all sorts of great college basketball action going on. Looks like we're redirecting. And I see the YouTube is rocking and rolling. All right, Hoosier Nation, we know times are rough. We do. This February has been an absolute nightmare. But on tonight's episode, and this may be tough for some of you to grasp, we're going to try to put lipstick on this pig, okay? We're not going to beat a dead horse. Here on the Hoosier Sound, we're moving on. IU's on a 5-game losing streak. Things are miserable. But can this be saved? Can the season be saved? We're going to dive into that and so much more here on episode 241 of the Hoosier Sound, where we are the official podcast of Indiana HQ. Tonight is Tuesday, February 22nd, 2022. I'm your host, Nithin Christian. Here with me is Indiana HQ contributor Jevan McCoskey. Matt had some other obligations he had to tend to. Jevan, look, 2 depressing, disastrous losses at home to Wisconsin and at Ohio State, where the Hoosiers had late leads as late as the final minute in Columbus after a big comeback, only to throw it away. What went wrong, and what are your biggest takeaways from what you saw over the last week?
The biggest takeaway I have is something that's been building far beyond just the last week of IU basketball, but it's really shown, especially against Ohio State, and we haven't been able to trust our best player down the stretch of these big games. Trey Jackson-Davis is far and away our best player on our team, one of the best players in the Big Ten, if not the country, and he had 3 points in the second half against Ohio State with only one shot attempt, not one shot made, just one shot made. And free throws continue to kill us. We left 8 points at the line against Ohio State. We lost by 11. We left 4 points on the line against Wisconsin. I know that's not a crazy number, but we lost by 5. So if you knock that in half, it's a one-possession game. Those are things that have been a struggle for Indiana over the course of the last 4 or 5 years, way beyond this year. But when you look at the talent this team has and the pieces that they have, we know that it can be done, and it's just still not being done. That's when it becomes more of a frustration than just looking at it and going, okay, we can't do it, because we can and we're not. That's what is becoming the most frustrating part.
They can, but they're not. I think that's a perfect way of putting it. This team has shown all year that they're capable of going pound for pound with anyone in the league, going so far as beating Purdue earlier in the season. But clearly, and this is my biggest takeaway, they're still fighting their demons. They're still fighting their demons from previous seasons. And you can tell, even against Ohio State, with a minute to go, they were saying, oh, shoot, we're in this position. We can see the light at the end of the tunnel. We're right there. We can taste it. And believe it or not, it was kind of the veteran players, the guys you expect to deliver, who really made crushing mistakes at the end. You look at Race Thompson, who committed that turnover after the timeout with about a minute to go, and then missed the defensive assignment on E.J. Liddell after a little bit of a broken play. You look at Trey Jackson-Davis, who did not hit a basket after halftime, went 0 for 3 from the field officially after halftime against Ohio State. He missed a bunch of free throws in the middle of the game, and the numbers overall looked okay for Jackson-Davis, right? 30 against Wisconsin. You're not going to be frustrated at that, but after looking really good in the first half against Ohio State, it all broke down. And then you think about, okay, Trey Galloway wasn't there, and a lot of other little things they get frustrated about. That's the reason this team still hasn't gotten that big win. However, the fact of the matter is, this season is not over. So, Jevan, let me ask you this, okay? I know IU's fighting some demons here. They are.
Mm-hmm.
But right now, we also have to admit to the fact that Indiana's losing games to really good teams. You're talking about a home loss to Illinois, a road loss to Michigan State, road loss to Ohio State, home loss to Wisconsin. Of course, the loss at Northwestern, you were woefully shorthanded. How much of Indiana's losing streak right now is between the ears versus, look, these are tournament teams that they're losing to, even when IU has a full strength roster.
Yeah, I mean, you have to look at the Big Ten for what it is. I mean, they call it a gauntlet for a reason. I mean, you play night in and night out. You're playing some of the top players in the country, let alone just your own conference. But you're right. I mean, a lot of it comes between the ears, and when you look at it, getting over the hump of something sometimes can be a lot harder than just winning one game or having one good personal game. I mean, you look at it, we've seen, like we've talked about, very bright glimpses of this team, even for stretches and periods of time throughout this season. But when you look at it, we don't really have a player who has seen season-long success, even with the transfers that we have. We have not seen a player or a group of players, whether they were recruited by IU or recruited by Pitt or recruited by whoever, Northwestern, none of them have seen a season-long success rate that needs to be had in order to get over that hump of being able to look past the things that have happened in the last couple of years. And I think, again, what is so frustrating is that we have the mentality. We have Trace Jackson Davis, who wants to be a winner. Xavier Johnson, you can see how bad he wants to win. All of the players want to win. It's just getting over that hump is a lot harder than just talking about it. You have to be, and I guess part of the solution is admitting that it might be a psychological thing. And I think that a lot of it does fall between the ears, but it cannot be understated that, we do play in the Big Ten. We see, the top half of our conference is loaded year in and year out. Now the bottom half is
not bad either. Now they're Nebraskas and stuff like that.
Right, like the very bottom is the very bottom. But when you look at all 14 teams with 13 teams, I guess, you're gonna have good competition night in, night out, and it is so hard to win on the road in our conference. So when you mix all of that together, it becomes a big mountain to climb. But like I've said, we have the talent and we've seen them be able to do it. It's just a matter of putting a stretch together of 4 games, of 5 games, and that's when you'll find the postseason success as well.
Yeah, and I think you made a great point there. It's not just the Indiana guys that have missed the tournament over the last few years. Miller Kopp in from Northwestern, no tournament success there. Parker Stewart, Tennessee Martin, and when he was on Pitt, no tournament success there. Same with Xavier Johnson when he was at Pittsburgh. Same with Michael Durr when he was at South Florida. They all have intriguing skill sets, and you can absolutely see why Mike Woodson and Dane Fife and Kenya Hunter and Yasir Roseman wanted to go out and recruit those players. But everyone on this roster is learning how to win at a high level, especially in Big Ten play. And here's where you know it for a fact. Here's where you know, okay, when you look at teams across the Big Ten, especially in the top 5, 6 seeds, they're at their sharpest at the end of the game, okay? They're at the sharpest at the end of the game, right? Even Ohio State, for example. Earlier this season, this is an Ohio State team that went to Purdue the end of January, and they were getting the doors beat off of them at Purdue. But Ohio State kept fighting. Ohio State kept adjusting. Ohio State kept that flexibility and kept making changes all the way to the point where the game came down to the final possession, right? And then you also think about a team like Wisconsin they're not just winning close games against Indiana. Did you see what Wisconsin did on Sunday before the brawl broke out? Mm-hmm. Wisconsin, the team that is in the top 4 and the top 5 of the Big Ten, that is consistently in the top 25 in the country, they have that finishing kick in the final 8 minutes to pull away from average teams in the conference. Non-conference plays a different story, but when you get into this crunch time part of the season, you see these great teams really finding that extra level, that extra gear to put teams away. And it doesn't always work. It doesn't always work, but you at least show your best basketball in the waning moments of the game, something that Indiana just has not been able to do. But with that said, all IU needed was one shot to fall. One of those Tamar Bates shots, right? One fewer turnover, one more mistake by the Buckeyes. And Indiana comes out of Columbus with a win, which would be the first quad 1 road win of the season, which would have alleviated so much stress and fear and pain at Hoosier Nation. Yeah. Indiana right now sits 16-10, 7-9 in Big Ten play, and they're square on the bubble. We're talking about either one of the last few teams in the field, one of the last few teams out of the field. And the schedule does get easier. We're going to preview Maryland. We're going to preview Minnesota here later in the episode. Jevan, I'm looking at this team, right? And after sleeping on it, I'm still saying, look, against good teams, you're still playing them close. And IU's bagged a couple of big wins this year. And the schedule's going to get easier. And I'm seeing certain players play better here over the course of the season. What's the positive? That's the title of this episode tonight. All right. Pitch me on what you see going well with this team right now and what needs to change for IU to get into the field.
I have a laundry list of things that I could go on and explain. The first being something that you kind of just touched on. We have one bad loss. And when I say bad loss, I don't mean to a bad team. I mean a game where we just did not play well. And that was when we played Michigan, in my eyes, and what I can remember. Every other game, it seems like we are competitive and we are in it to at least until the last 5 minutes of it, what seems like every game. So that's the first thing. We are competitive, and those games, I know we only have 4 left, but once one falls our way, who says that the next one can't? And then the one after that, it's just getting that first one, it can lead to so much. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, I know I harped on him a little earlier, but we still have Trey Jackson-Davis, and we still have a great counterpunch with Race Thompson. I think that while he's struggled a little bit in the recent past, he's still one of the best players in the country, and he's still someone who, on any given night, can go out there and have a game like he did against Wisconsin, where he has 30 and 12. Also, I think second half of that game against Ohio State, we were down double digits at one point. We did show the will and the fight to make a comeback. No, I know we didn't mark it off the way we wanted to, but in that stretch, Miller Kopp showed flashes of what I wanted to see throughout the entire year. He went on a 7-2 run by himself that brought Indiana back into it when we were down by 10. That is what I want to see moving forward, and that is what maybe just a single stretch like that can do for somebody, is something that we might not be able to understand as people who aren't the players, but a stretch like that where one player who has been struggling to find the bottom of the basket has a stretch where he knocks down a mid-range shot, some free throws, and a corner three, maybe that's all he needs to get going, especially somebody like Miller, who we know can shoot the ball at a high level. Also, Xavier Johnson might be the fastest point guard I've ever seen with the ball in his hands. And I know he plays a little bit out of control at times, but I will take someone who's going to play hard in and out every single possession and who has the ball speed that he does. There's not one person in our conference that I think can stay in front of him. Now, what he does after that is where the questions lie, but I do think that he has struggled the last few games. But we saw, like I said before, we've seen stretches where, he has 28 assists to only 6 turnovers, and he is able to play at a high level. So the pieces are there, right? Miller Kopp, Trey Jackson-Davis, Xavier Johnson, the pieces are there. Now it's the hard part is to go and put them together. And when you do that, I think we have a very good basketball team. And if those pieces can get put together starting against Maryland, we still have a chance. We will make the tournament if those pieces get put together. If we finish 3-1, I do think that we make the tournament. If we finish 4-0, obviously, I think we make the tournament. But the pieces have to get put together. And with only 4 games left, we keep saying, maybe they'll figure it out next game, but we can only say that a few more times before there aren't any next games.
Yeah, I mean, you really have to go 2-0 this week, and you have to beat Rutgers. There's really no path for Indiana into March Madness if you lose either of the next 3 games.
Yeah.
But I see the Hoosiers winning all 3. Okay. And the thing is, I loved a lot of what you said. And I think those important details are reasons why Indiana should feel confident about their chances here to be one of 68. I know Indiana fans want to compare this team to Big Ten powerhouses, and rightfully so. One day, soon enough, Indiana will be in that top tier along with whoever else, right? You can pick your team or your teams at the top, whether it's Purdue or Illinois or Ohio State or Wisconsin or Michigan State or whatever. But right now, Indiana's just got to be one of those at-large teams, right? One of those that scrape in. And we're going to compare some resumes in a minute. But the fact of the matter is, when you've got Trayce Jackson-Davis and when you've got guys playing better, and you might say, what are you guys talking? Shut up about TJD. Well, still, even after all this, even after all the nitpicking and all the fine-tuning and all the aggravation and all the frustration, Jackson has put up 10 points in the first half yesterday. He was blocking shots. He was grabbing rebounds. He blocked a shot in the second half. He was doing the right things. He's carrying himself correctly on the court. He just ran into a really rough stretch of missed free throws that are inexcusable. But you're still talking about one of the elite players in the Big Ten. And if you can't get him the ball to score, that means defenses are paying a lot of attention to him, and you're going to need other players to pick it up. Now, I don't think Trayce Jackson-Davis is unbenchable. I don't think Trayce Jackson-Davis is the best player in the conference. He may not even be a first-team All-Big Ten player when it's all said and done. But you still have to admit Jackson-Davis is a very good player that 99% of college basketball would love to have on their team. You mentioned Miller Kopp. The guy I'm excited to watch between now and the end of the season is Tamar Bates. The birthday boy yesterday, he turned 19 years old on Monday night. Okay.
And Say it again.
Yeah. He's not 28. Okay. 19 years old. Okay. And I saw, and all of you saw him play 25 minutes, 7 points, 5 rebounds, and more deep than that, he showed the attitude that you need to have to win games in this conference. He's the one guy really who's won a lot of games before playing this season at Indiana, because he's coming over from a high school powerhouse in IMG, and he's just sliding right into Bloomington. He, among the other guys on this roster, probably has that winning mindset and that winning culture, and conversely doesn't have the scars of previous years that he has to bear. And I also saw someone statistically who went +8 at Ohio State, by far Indiana's best plus-minus number against the Buckeyes. And if just a few more shots fall, you're talking about really one of the more emerging stars of the Big Ten. I need to see more Tamar Bates. And I don't know if there's one specific player you take out of the rotation necessarily, but with more Bates and with more Trey Galloway once he returns from his lower body injury, Jevan, I still see some optimism for this team here. Am I crazy, or do you think there's something to this?
No, there's absolutely something to this. And just to continue to harp on Tamar Bates in a positive way, when was the last time that we've had a player that you've looked at and said, okay, if the shot clock's winding down, I think I want the ball in his hands.
Somebody's got to do it, right? And Xavier Johnson has pretty much been that guy all year, but maybe it's time to hand over the keys to the clutch mobile to Tamar Bates. Let's go.
Yeah,
let's see this guy take some big shots like he did against Ohio State. And one of them fall, you're thrilled.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that Tamar has shown throughout the whole season that he can be that person, but he's shown the glimpses. And at only before yesterday, at only 18 years of age, that not everyone has that young. That's something that might need to be developed, and sometimes doesn't ever get developed in the first place. So to have it at that young of an age, the more he plays now, so this is something we touched on before we started the podcast. If the more he plays now, I know Hoosier fans aren't a long game fan base. They want everything now, but
and I don't blame them. I don't blame them.
I know, but in this instance, he helps us now, and the more he plays helps us that much more in the future. That is what I'm saying whenever I'm talking about Tamar Bates. Now, like you said, who does he go in for? Whose minutes does he swap with? I think you look at Miller Kopp and Parker Stewart, and you say pick one. Whoever's not having their game, pick one. It's not going to be the same one every time. But the thing with Tamar we don't know about is that defensive end. He's still in his young body, but the more defense the more minutes you get, the better it gets.
You got to play through it.
Yeah,
you got to play through it, and that's where you really trust this coaching staff, who's done a very good job of teaching defense this year, to embed their lessons learned and their coaching mentality into Bates, who is young, and obviously the coaching staff liked Tamar Bates.
Yeah.
He's one of the key players they brought in right after they were hired. In fact, I think even one or two assistants were not even on the staff yet when Tamar Bates changed his commitment from Texas to Indiana. And so let's give this guy a shot. In fact, I'm going so far as to say I want to see Tamar Bates start along with Trey Galloway once Galloway is healthy and available as soon as Indiana's game on Thursday night, and let Miller Kopp and Parker Stewart figure things out off the bench. I think that's one spark. That's one you got to really shake things up on the offensive side. And I think that's something Mike Woodson can look to do here as soon as Thursday night's game, because look, even after a 45-minute game where Indiana hit a few more shots than we would normally expect, they still struggle to hit the 70-point mark. And my gosh, I was watching Iowa's offense just before we started our podcast tonight, and it feels like they play a whole different game over there in Iowa City. And it's not exactly because they're a significantly more talented basketball team. So I know it's an apples to oranges comparison, but again, something you can do to really shake it up. I see someone who's confident. I see someone here who's not necessarily reckless, and someone who overcame a struggle earlier this season. I want to see him get more responsibility in this offense going forward. Now, we asked all of you on our weekly podcast poll, which Hoosier on the following list do you want to see play well and show improvement between now and the rest of the season? The list was Trey Galloway, Jordan Geronimo, Tamar Bates, and the last option was Christian Lander / Anthony Leal. And 61% of you do say Tamar Bates. I fully agree with the 61% of you that have voted. Over 100 votes have come in. This poll just popped up. Jevan, is there an answer you want to give to that question? Which Hoosier of those do you really want to see play well and show improvement between now and when the season comes to a close?
I mean, realistically, I think I want it to be Tamar Bates. If I had the chance to make someone play the best of their capability, I would say Christian Lander. But I mean, that's just me, and that's who I've always said. Literally since the day he got
nothing
here.
wrong with that.
No, absolutely not. But it's just at this point, he's got that lower leg injury. We don't know when he'll be healthy. And with only 4 games minimum remaining, you don't really know when that next shot for him would be. Also, actually, Anthony Leal. I love when he's on the floor, but against Ohio State, and actually in his most recent, anytime he's been very inconsistent from behind the 3, and that's his biggest strength. Now, he doesn't let it affect him on defense, which is great, and he is still tenacious on defense and gets his hands in the passing lanes, and that is phenomenal. But even against Ohio State, missed a wide open 3 from the left wing, and then right before half, misses 2 free throws. If he makes those free throws, maybe he sees more playing time, and that's just better for him in the long run.
Yeah.
But Anthony Leal would be my answer for that.
Well, hey, if Indiana gets contributions here from Anthony Leal down the stretch, hitting some big shots, something like that would be really interesting. I know it's a point of frustration for a lot of IU fans to see him miss those free throws before the break yesterday. We'll see if he responds when he does get an opportunity next. A lot of it will depend on Trey Galloway's return. We don't know much about it. Again, Indiana did not have Galloway with a lower body issue or Christian Lander with that sore leg against Ohio State. They continue to be without Rob Finney, as you can expect, that injury he suffered in the Penn State game. We have no idea when Finney will return. Finney, according to Mike Woodson, won't be seen by Hoosier fans for a while here as far as in playing capacity. We don't know exactly what that means. But for instance, I would not expect him to play either game this week against Maryland or Minnesota. We're going to preview both of those games and first talk about IU's NCAA tournament chances here in just a second. But first, it's time for Who Won the Week this past week in IU sports. And hey, how about a couple of people who have moved on from the IU men's basketball program over the last few decades? The veteran, the elder statesman, Isaiah Thomas. He was named to the NBA 75 roster over All-Star Weekend. He got his jacket. He got plenty of FaceTime on TNT. He was part of the Inside the NBA crew during different parts of TNT's coverage on All-Star Weekend. So it's great to see Zeke doing his thing. He continued to be really one of the more prominent ex-NBA legends who get FaceTime here on television, whether it's on TNT or NBA TV. And hey, how about a current pro, Thomas Bryant, someone you may not have heard of all that much over the last year as he was coming off a knee injury. He's getting more playing time after the Wizards made some moves before the trade deadline. So if you really are looking out to root on a fellow Indiana Hoosier, players like OG Anunoby, Thomas Bryant, getting more playing time here in the NBA as the regular season hits its home stretch. Reminder, this part is important. If you'd like to subscribe to our podcast for free, all you have to do, search for the Hoosier Sound wherever you listen to podcasts. Stay up to date with all of our information by following us on Twitter at Indiana HQ and at the Hoosier Sound. A reminder, if you enjoy our show, leave us a review, tell a friend, share our links. That kind of support really helps us grow this podcast, especially as we hit postseason time here and reach more passionate IU fans such as yourself. Jevan, let's talk about the NCAA tournament. It's the carrot at the end of the stick that Indiana basketball has been trying to grab for the last 5 years. It looked like a certainty, and then players got suspended, and a 5-game losing streak happened. Currently, Indiana again, right on the cusp, right? Depending on the bracket you look like, they're either one of the final teams into the field, one of the first teams out of the field. What does Indiana need to do to make the NCAA tournament? Is 18-12 good enough? 19-11? Do they have to get to 20-10? What does Indiana need to do in the Big Ten tournament? The floor is yours.
19-11 is the number regular season wise. You can't split. You can't go 2-2 in these last 4 games. Like we've mentioned, you go home road, and there are 2 games you have at home are Maryland and Rutgers. Those need to be without question. The home game against Maryland needs to be a dominant win. It needs to be, okay, let's get this ship sail on the right sail and let's get back on track. And then when you go on the road to Minnesota, that has to be another win as well. I know it's a tough place to play, but it has to be a win. The only game that you can afford to slip up is Purdue. But when you look at it, we've beaten them this year, and everyone remembers it. Now, I know circumstances are different. You're playing on the road. You don't have Rob Finney. Rob had one of his best games as a Hoosier. But it's one of those games that you look at and you go, okay, who says we aren't going to win? I know it's a tough place to play, and Purdue's playing the best basketball of the year so far, and we are not. But in 4 games from now, who's to say that we aren't playing much better basketball? When looking at the Big Ten tournament, we have to get at least 1 win. We can't go winless in the tournament and expect to get the draw to be one of 68. I would like to see 2 wins, depending on what seed we get. But I know that could be, just a little bit of a stretch. But before the Big Ten tournament, you have to look at the last 4 games, and before you look at the last 4 games, you have to look at the game that's next. So we have to go 1-0 for the next at least 3 games, and if not 4 games.
Yep, absolutely. And I see Jack in the live chat here. He mentioned you got to win the next 3. And I think a lot of Hoosier Nation agree with his sentiments. You do have to win the next 3, especially when you consider at Minnesota gives you a road win, a true road win. That stuff matters. The selection committee, when it's all said and done, looks back and says, okay, how does this team do on the road? Okay, you can say, well, good news. Indiana went 3 and whatever, and pretty much all their losses were against teams in the field. And then you can add in Syracuse, Penn State, Northwestern to that. At the end of the day, the margin of defeats in those games was not that much either. So that's how the selection committee looks at it. Of course, the win over Rutgers would be a head-to-head win over a bubble team.
Mm-hmm.
And that's massive. That's huge.
Especially that Rutgers team, because that Rutgers team is hot.
They're playing really well. Yeah. Talking about 4 wins consecutively over ranked teams. And if Indiana can just make that happen, you at least put yourselves in a position where you go into that Purdue game and who knows what happens. I also agree with you that Indiana needs to win that Thursday game in the Big Ten tournament. All indications right now are that Indiana is going to start the Big Ten tournament as a 9 seed. Of course, who knows what happens over the next 2 weeks, but the projection right now is that Indiana starts the tournament as a 9 seed. And on Thursday, we'll play, it looks like they'll play the worst of Michigan State, Michigan, or Iowa. And so we'll see how this plays out over the next 2 weeks. But if Indiana once again has to play Michigan, for instance, you're talking about a neutral site, but really a home slant in Indianapolis against another bubble team in Michigan, where it's pretty fair to say, look, if you beat a bubble team in Rutgers and you beat a bubble team in Michigan, well, that's how you end up on the right side of the bubble. So, especially after Michigan now is going to deal with a lot of off the court stuff, we'll see what happens here for their season between now and the Big Ten tournament. How invested are they? How engaged are they? Do they respond with intensity and toughness, or do they sort of wilt because the season is kind of a lost season as far as Michigan basketball is concerned? Who knows? But what's interesting to me, Jeff, is once again, Indiana fans cannot compare this team to the Gonzagas and the Villanovas and the Baylors and the Illinois and even the Wisconsins or Michigan States of the world. Have you seen how horrible this bubble is?
Bad.
Have you looked? I mean, it's really sad. I mean, consider if you head over to bracketmatrix.com, they do a really good job of synthesizing all the different projections out there onto one clean web page. And right now, according to Bracket Matrix, Indiana is comprehensively an 11th seed in the field as things stand. However, Indiana is missing in about a quarter of the brackets. Now, what you notice is that there are a few teams above Indiana on the S curve. Teams like the University of San Francisco, teams like Notre Dame, teams like Loyola Chicago. And I know Loyola Chicago has done great in previous tournaments, but that has no resemblance or relevance to this year. But teams like San Francisco, their best wins this year are against Davidson and a road win at BYU. San Francisco also has a Q4 home loss to Portland and a quad 3 neutral loss to Grand Canyon. Similarly, Notre Dame is a team Indiana's beaten head-to-head on a neutral site. Really important if the Irish don't end up winning the ACC tournament. Loyola is a team whose best win this year is a neutral site win against USF, San Francisco, and a road win at Missouri State. Indiana's fighting with teams like Davidson and Creighton and Memphis. Jevan, Indiana fans got to realize the bubble is horrible, and you're talking about just getting in as one of 68, not as a 1 seed or a 2 seed or a 3 seed.
Yeah, and the beauty behind all of this madness is that Indiana still controls all of it. As long as they continue to, as long as they start to win these games, they're going to be fine. But it's whenever let's say, I mean, I don't see how it happens, but let's say they lose to one of the Maryland and Minnesota games. Then it starts to play into, okay, now you need teams to lose, and then you have to make sure that you win at Purdue. But right now, it's all in our own hands. It's all in how we decide to play these next 4 games of basketball. And I think if you come out and if it wasn't something they knew already, then they should know now. And it's honestly something that Woodson should be pushing on them. Like, listen, if you don't go out there and you don't perform, you're not going to see the postseason. You're going to see 1 game in the Big Ten tournament, maybe 2, and then that's it. And so it's just being able to say that it's still in our control or in their control is the beauty behind all of this madness. So yes, the bubble isn't great. It's not. It really isn't. And that plays into the favor of Indiana. And if they can go in there and do what they're supposed to do, then they're going to be fine.
And I see Jack's comment in the live chat that, hey, right now projected to face Michigan State. Yeah, I mean, this is a Spartans team that right now is going to lose their 5th out of 6 games. They have a 20-point loss to Rutgers. And by the way, tonight, right, that 5th loss, down 30 at Iowa late in the second half. Again, that's a team, again, a road game, a road opponent that Indiana faced earlier this year, where the Hoosiers held a halftime lead before they let go of the rope in the second half, as we've seen frequently with this IU team. But again, Indiana played Iowa a lot more competitively. But one thing I would highly suggest all of you to do is go to bracketmatrix.com, look at the teams that are around Indiana in the field, and then head over to those teams' resumes and just take a look at how either equally poor or more poor they are than Indiana's. And I know IU's frustrating, and I know the goal at the start of the season was to be much better than whatever you're seeing right now, especially after Indiana beat teams like Ohio State or Purdue. But when you look at San Francisco's resume, or you look at Miami's resume, you look at Wake Forest's resume, or you look at North Carolina's resume compared to Indiana's.
Yeah.
IU's win over Purdue alone could be enough when it's all said and done, especially when you look at how the NCAA selection committee ranked the top 4 seed lines over the weekend. There was a really great article written by former Hoosier Iman Brennan on The Athletic, who said that based on the top 16 teams as they were placed in a mock NCAA tournament field over the weekend, the selection committee looks like they're placing importance on wins over good teams more than anything else. Not really placing too much emphasis on how you rank in the metrics as far as the Ken Palms or the Bart Torviks are concerned. More attention right now just being paid to, all right, who are you beating straight up? Of course, just because that's the way to look at it now doesn't mean that's how they're going to look at it in a couple of weeks. But if you do have a subscription to The Athletic, strongly recommend looking at that Iman Brennan article, which I believe was released earlier on Tuesday. So this Indiana team still, believe it or not, after a 5-game losing streak, has plenty to play for. And the NCAA tournament is, I would say, at this point, about a 50-50 shot. Not 0-100, like a lot of you probably believe right now. It's a 50-50 shot. And if you ask me, the first step to success will be beating Maryland on Thursday night. The Hoosiers face the Terrapins. Indiana's last win, which feels like it came 10 years ago, came at the end of January when the Hoosiers went to College Park and beat the Terps 68-55. By the way, after Maryland lost 5 straight earlier this year, including that loss to Indiana, the Terps have won back-to-back games here, although we're talking about double-digit road win at Nebraska, home win over Penn State. Maryland is 88th in Ken Palm, Indiana's 49th. Maryland's got a 78th rated offense in the country, 107th rated defense in college basketball. Jevan, this is a team that plays 8 guys, okay? Who are you looking forward to seeing on Thursday night at 7 p.m. Eastern, Hoosiers versus Terrapins? What are a couple of key matchups you're looking forward to watching?
I'm looking for I know, shut up. Don't talk about him anymore. But Trace has got to have another bounce back game. And I think that whenever you look at the matchup, and it's not just Trace, it's the entire front court, and whether that's Trace, Race, or even Michael Durr, I think they're going to have a big game, especially when you look at the Maryland bigs. It's going to be a scrappy game down low. It's going to be, bigs versus bigs, old fashioned. It's not going to be stretched to the floor. It's going to be big versus big down low. And I think Trace is going to use this. I think he should use this game as a pedestal towards the rest of the season, because as you look at the rest of the year, everything leads to that Purdue game for him. And I think he can use every single game to get better and better and better and build more and more confidence as you go to that game. But that's in the future. We're focused on Maryland right now. I'm also excited to see how Xavier Johnson bounces back after having 5 turnovers in the first half. He had a phenomenal second half. I don't think without him, we're even close into that game, into the second half against Ohio State. So Trace and X for sure, and as well as the rest of the front court.
Yeah, Xavier Johnson deserves some kind of trophy or medal for making all 10 of his free throws.
Yeah, my goodness, I don't know if that's ever happened in my tenure here at IU.
On Monday night. Now, he shot 3 of 12 from the field, which I know Mike Woodson would like to get fixed ASAP. As far as I'm concerned, I'm looking at Xavier Johnson too. That's a big match against Fats Russell out of Maryland. And IU fans, knock on wood that Trey Galloway is available for this game on Thursday night. He's going to be incredibly important for Indiana as they match up against guys like Eric Ayala, for example, on Maryland. Ayala is one of the steadiest backcourt players in the conference. He had a little bit of an injury thing earlier in February. He may not be at 100%. He may not start necessarily, but he does get a lot of playing time, if nothing else, coming off the bench for Maryland. This is a Terrapins team, though, that Indiana should beat. They struggle to force turnovers. They struggle to rebound. And, of course, it's a team that's just kind of playing out the string, right? Even as bad as it feels like things are for Indiana, IU's still fighting for a purpose here, still fighting for some end-of-season achievements. Not really the case for Maryland, who have lost too many games for any kind of postseason consideration. Jevan, talk to me. Indiana is projected to win this game by 6 points over on KenPom. The final, according to the metrics, is supposed to be 70-64. Indiana's got a 72% probability of winning, if that means anything. As you look at this matchup between Maryland and Indiana at Assembly Hall on Thursday night, who do you think wins and by how much?
I don't know how many of our listeners are gamblers, but I would hammer Indiana -6. I think this is going to be a big bounce back game in a way that Indiana needs oh so dearly. I think that as long as we can limit the unforced turnovers, I know we're going to turn the ball over, but people are going to play hard. But as long as we can limit the unforced turnovers or the self-inflicting turnovers, then I think we're gonna handle this game and win by double digits. I think Indiana wins. I think Indiana wins 71-59. I think Indiana handles business against Maryland.
71-59. That would be a sight for sore eyes for Indiana fans.
Yes,
as the Hoosiers would sort of put that losing streak behind them. I think Indiana wins as well. I think IU will come out home court. Only 2 home games left this season. I think IU will sort of get up off the mat, all right, which they've hit the mat 5 straight times here to start February. But I do think Indiana will have the resolve, the mentality to beat Maryland. I expect Race Thompson and Trace Jackson Davis to really carry their weight inside. Xavier Johnson becoming more of a factor. I want to see more Tamar Bates. Because even if Tamar Bates goes 3 for 12, he gives the offense a different look. He gives the offense a different dynamic. And then on the other hand, if he hits a few more shots, you're talking about somebody who's 7 for 12, which is an 18-point performance roughly. And when you add in some of the other things, then you go, oh, hey, look, we've unlocked a pretty big offensive contributor here. So I'm looking forward to seeing more Tamar Bates in conjunction with Johnson, Thompson, and Jackson Davis. I think Indiana wins as well. I think it'll be a little bit of a higher scoring game. I don't know about Indiana covering 6 necessarily, but I've got IU winning at 73-68 in Bloomington. I think Indiana's going to find a little something on offense here, finally going up against a team that doesn't have an elite defense. Not that Ohio State's great. They're not. But again, Maryland in general, just a lower tier team in the Big Ten. So that's how Jevan and I see Maryland against Indiana playing out against 7 Eastern start Thursday night on, I believe it's FS1. Before we talk about Indiana's game on Sunday evening, it's time for a social media shout out where even though IU women's basketball has hit their roughest patch of the season, including getting swept in a 2-game series by Iowa on Saturday and on Monday, Hoosier forward Grace Berger I don't know if she's a forward. She's really a jack of all trades.
Yeah.
A Jill of all trades? Don't answer that question. Grace Berger was given a shout out on social media by none other than Skylar Diggins-Smith, one of the most popular faces in the entire basketball world, a legend out of Notre Dame, someone who's had a long WNBA career. Diggins-Smith loved what she saw out of Berger in IU's Monday loss at Iowa. But hey, anytime, what would you say? She's a LeBron of the women's side. I mean, my gosh, someone with her platform gives you a shout out. You'll absolutely take that to the bank. So the IU women's team struggling a little bit here, but again, they're going to stay in the top 15 or 16 by the time the next top 25 poll rolls around. Indiana has one more regular season game left before the Big Ten tournament. So make sure you lock in here as the Hoosiers head into the big part of their season. Even after this slump, fully believe that Indiana women's basketball can make a run to the Final Four, and not impossible that they end up cutting down the nets when it's all said and done. Women's basketball this year, I don't know if you've paid attention to it. It's absolutely crazy. The top isn't as dominant as it normally is. Feels like teams in the top 25 lose consistently, and that's something Indiana can take here going forward into March Madness. Real quick, if you don't already, make sure you give us a follow on Twitter, on Facebook, like our stuff, retweet it, subscribe to it over on YouTube. You can follow us on social media at Indiana HQ on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. You can also follow us over on the Hoosier Sound for all your podcast needs. On Instagram, we're not Indiana HQ, but we're Indiana.HQ. So we have handles on all the different platforms. On Instagram over there, we upload pictures and photos and videos of different venues across the Big Ten, including Assembly Hall. So make sure you head over Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Give us a follow if you've not already. If you have, tell a friend, tell a neighbor, tell a family member, tell a stranger. It really doesn't matter as we head down the most critical stretch of the IU basketball season. Okay, Jevan. Now, we both think Indiana's going to beat Maryland on Thursday.
Yeah.
But the Hoosiers won't have much time to rest. These games are coming fast and furious in Big Ten play. And on Sunday evening at 6 Eastern, which is 5 p.m. up in the Central Time Zone in Minneapolis, on ESPN2, the Hoosiers will get a second matchup against the Minnesota Golden Gophers, a team that once again Indiana beat earlier this season, 73-60 over in Assembly Hall. Rob Finney went crazy in that game. One thing to keep an eye out for is that Minnesota point guard Peyton Willis missed the Gophers last game because of COVID protocols. We'll see if he plays against Wisconsin on Wednesday. Jevan, Minnesota is below the 100 line in Ken Palm. Their defense is horrible. It is a road game, though.
Yeah.
What should IU fans know about this matchup between Indiana and Minnesota?
Okay, well, I mentioned against Maryland that I believe TJD and Race will have a good game. They better have a good game against Minnesota on the road because that's how bad their front court is. I genuinely think that Trace could have maybe his best game of the year. And again, I think that he should have that mentality going into this game of, okay, let me just take over and just build that confidence back up. That is honestly the outside of just playing a whole 40 minutes of basketball. That is what I'm looking at, is Trace dominating that game.
Yeah, and Minnesota is a team that really struggles to rebound the basketball. They did, to their credit, even without Willis, whoop Northwestern over the weekend. They deserve credit. It was a 17-point win for the Gophers against the Wildcats. Minnesota also knocked off Penn State back on February 12th. That was a 6-point home win for the Gophers. When they've been at full strength this year, they've been a little plucky. Now, with that said, still, they have a couple of recent 20-plus point losses in Big Ten play, so not going to make them out to be, a real major underdog threat. However, Indiana's projected to win this game by just a point over on KenPom. Over there, he's got Indiana winning this game 66-65. Personally, I'm looking at Indiana feasting inside and also paying attention to what Xavier Johnson can do if Peyton Willis is unable to go. I'm also, along those lines, paying attention to what Xavier Johnson can do if Peyton Willis plays, especially when you consider that Rob Finney is probably unavailable for Indiana on Sunday evening. Jevan, I want to see the Hoosiers put up at least 75 points in this game, but KenPom has it 66-65. So according to you, who wins between the Hoosiers and the Gophers, and by how much?
I mentioned that I want this to be a game where TJD and Race just show their dominance. But what I don't want is for this to become a free throw shooting contest, because not necessarily is Minnesota the best free throw shooting team in the Big Ten, but we statistically are the worst. And so I don't want it to become a battle of who's going to hit more free throws. I want it to just be, we go out there, we are the bigger, better, faster team, and we prove that on the road. Now, I know Minnesota is not an easy place to play. And I think that kind of plays into the 66-65 projection. Just how we see when teams come to Assembly Hall, how we get 3 or 4 points just because they come into us. But I want Indiana to go, and I want them to just prove that they are the bigger team and better team. And I think they will. I agree. I think 70 points is more of the 70-75. What's the difference, right? I think Indiana goes in there and they win 73-68.
We'll see if Indiana can get that done. An interesting wrinkle here. We're approaching that time of the season. This will be Minnesota's last home game of the year, so they're going to have a little bit of added incentive, perhaps, to finish that home season playing as hard as they possibly can. With that said, though, I think Indiana's going to have enough to get the job done. I still feel like Indiana's not going to lay down. They're not going to quit on the season, even after how difficult it was to watch the Hoosiers lose those games to the Badgers and to the Buckeyes. I think Indiana's got a comfortable blowout win up their sleeve here in this particular game. Minnesota, a little feisty at home, but I want to see Indiana really flex their muscle here. So I'm going to say Indiana wins it 75-61, takes care of business in Minneapolis. I'm probably going to be wrong, right? Just kidding. We'll see. We'll see how.
Hey, listen, who cares how they win? Just get it done.
Just get it done, right? And I think that's the moral of the story. Who cares? Does the selection committee care? I don't think so. I think at the end of the day, all that matters is that Indiana records 2 wins. I don't think right now it's all that important that Indiana attaches style points to those victories. No. It maybe matters in other instances. I don't think it matters here. I think, as you said, Jevan, Indiana winning these 2 games is the most important thing on this agenda for the week, regardless of exactly how they end up doing it. So that's how Jevan and I feel. We both think, cross your fingers, that Indiana is going to win both games this week, setting up what would be a massive senior day home clash against Rutgers on Wednesday night, March 2nd. We'll talk about that game and the Purdue game on our podcast next week. But as we wind down here, Jevan, look, we moved on this podcast. We weren't going to beat this team down even more. They know they're on a 5-game losing streak. They know their chances of making the NCAA tournament are lower now than they've been at any point previously this season. What are your closing thoughts here as you wind down on Tuesday night?
Yeah, you mentioned there's no reason for us to come in here and continue to beat a dead horse whenever we know and they know that it's next game up. And if you have people down, it's the same thing, next man up. And next up is Maryland. And, we will try to get healthy. And if they're not healthy, then it's the next man up, or just play X all 40 minutes. Who knows? But yeah, no, it's going to continue to be a 1-0 mentality. I'm a Colts fan, so I've heard 1-0 for the last 3 years, it feels like. And it's seeped its way over into IU basketball. So just continue to have that mindset. And as fans, you have to continue to support this team, because it's not like they're trying to lose these games. They're going out there, give it their all, and they've just come up a little short a majority of the time. But once that one win comes, the rest will follow.
Yeah, and Mike Woodson said it after the game on Monday night. He said, look, have you seen this team play? He asked a reporter, have you seen this team play? They're fighting, they're trying, they're playing through it. And again, you look back at the Wisconsin game or the Ohio State game, or you name it, 1 or 2 bounces go Indiana's way and things are different. But that's in the past. Mm-hmm. The here and now, I'm going to make a little edit to what you said. Not 1-0 mentality. I think Indiana's got to have a 3-0 mentality here, okay? Look, the segment of the schedule that you're in, it's lighter than the games you've played earlier this year. Give it your best shot. And again, if I'm looking at the coaching staff, make a big change on offense and give Tamar Bates more leeway. Give him more authority as far as this offense is concerned. You can look at the shooting percentages all you want, but he has the attitude and the skill set to change the dynamic of this team's offense, which can make a huge difference from losing games by a couple of points or a couple of possessions to winning these games by a couple of points or a couple of possessions. So that's what I have my out for. I don't think you can sit Tamar Bates all that much. I continue to see 25 minutes per game down the stretch for him between now and the end of the season. But that about wraps it up for our 241st show of the Hoosier Sound. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your support. Thank you to our live audience. You're all beautiful people. To hear more fantastic episodes like the one you heard today, be sure to follow us at Indiana HQ and at the Hoosier Sound to make sure you don't miss any in the future. You can also go to our website, indianahq.com, to find it all in one place. But as always, thank you for listening, Hoosier Nation, and we will see you next time.